Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to make this as quick and painless as possible. You are going to answer these EdPuzzle questions. They're the same exact questions that are on your study guide, but these ones are being graded. The ones on the study guide are not being graded. So we're talking about sustainable forestry. I'm probably going to move my face around a bunch here. There we go. So sustainable forestry is like any other sustainable practice. This is you need to manage a forest to make the resources available indefinitely. In the Lorax, they definitely did not log in a sustainable manner. They cut everything down and then we're like, oh poop, what do we do? All right. So basically, you need to determine which methods appear most consistent and sustainable, and then you can compare the management of a specific forest with those standards. So you come up with a best practices and you try to do that. And it's really, really hard. Okay? So FSC is Forest Stewardship Council, and this little mark shows that it comes from a well-managed forest. However, the issue with this is that you need a series of harvests to prove that you're doing it in a sustainable manner. And when you're only harvesting, you have to let these trees grow 20 years. It's not like a crop that, it's done in 90 days and 100 days. There's a long lag time with this. So there are a lot of issues with this program. But we still have a lot of different solutions. You protect your most endangered areas, all those hotspots of biodiversity, especially the rainforests there. If you are protecting those areas, your other areas aren't as important. I hate to say that, but as far as biodiversity goes, that's the case. Education is huge. If somebody doesn't know that it's happening or what the negative effects are, out of sight, out of mind, they don't care. But if you educate someone about it, there's that chance that things are going to change. Education is our best weapon in society. Phase out subsidies. So a lot of unsustainable forest practices are subsidized. So the government gives these companies money to clear cut in a certain area. And so it makes it it incentivizes it for these private companies. Replace it with subsidies for sustainable forest use. And we say that all the time with fossil fuels. Take away all the subsidies from fossil fuels. If renewables had all of these subsidies, everybody would be getting into them. Protect forests with depth for nature swaps. What this is there are cases where it's voluntary and there are cases where you get paid to do so. And what you do is you decide that a lot of times it's for carbon emissions or carbon sequestration. And as a company, usually you can be paid for like keeping this tract of land rather than developing it because you are preserving those ecosystem services. Certify sustainably grown products, kind of like organic produce. Reduce illegal cutting, which comes down to enforcement. If you can't enforce it, then you can't tell people not to. Reduce, and then the two big, like kind of overarching things, which are underlying causes, reduce poverty and slow population growth. Okay? It all comes down to us. We are the problem. And then kind of what seems like something simple is concentrate growth in already cut areas. This is your forest. You've cut you've cut down this area over here, but the rest of it is forest. So let's just develop this area. Let's not develop this area and then one over here and one over here and one over here. Just make this area a little bit bigger and everybody can be together. Although right now we shouldn't be doing that. All right. So maximum sustainable yield is like with anything. You need to figure out how much you can take out, how much you need to plant, and the time in between. It's a fairly simple idea that in practice goes to poop. So managed populations are much smaller than natural populations, so it's a little bit easier. But the thing is that if you're reducing populations so drastically, this affects other species, like the habitat and niche and stuff like that. Okay. So then trees, instead of being able to grow to maturity and then fill these niches for other organisms, they're cut down, and that changes the forest ecology. So even if you're planting the same trees over and over again, that kind of word there, which is no forest is just one species, you're changing the ecology in this area. You're changing the ecosystem services. All right. So sustainable forestry. The U.S. Forest Service, they manage wildlife, non-game animals, endangered species. They push for an ecosystem-based management and that approach, like I've spoken about before. So instead of just protecting this one type of woodpecker, we're going to protect this whole ecosystem. And by doing that, we're going to protect this woodpecker. We're going to protect this one. We're going to, hit these 3 owls over here. And oh, look, we're also now protecting, bobcats and all sorts of other things because we're focusing on the ecosystem, not just the little niches within. So sustainable cutting in these areas can be selective cutting, which you guys know about, and it can be something else called shelter wood or seed tree cutting. And what that is you don't cut those trees that are big and mature and throwing out seeds, because they're the ones who are going to repopulate that area. Okay, same thing with shelter wood. A shelter wood or even a snag is an old tree that's still there, but it's providing some sort of habitat for different organisms. National forests. We log in national forests. Okay. They're used for timber, ecological services, recreation. We mine in a lot of these areas. So these are advantages, these are disadvantages. Our national forests are meant to be resources there for us, and they need to be managed so that we can keep taking resources from them. But they need to be managed in a sustainable way. These are some different federal agencies that own land in the US. Obviously, you can see in the Midwest, and further out west, there is a lot of open space. You have the greenish, light green, yellowish is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Bureau of Land Management is that purple, and those aren't necessarily national parks. It's just areas that the Bureau of Land Management owns, and a lot of those areas are open for logging and mining and everything like that. Fish and Wildlife Service is few and far between because it's usually more aquatic. Forest Service, you can see a fair amount is the Forest Service, and then you have national parks, which are scattered throughout these like BLM, Bureau of Land Management areas, and Fish and Wildlife and Forest Service. Okay, so timber is extracted on public, okay, which is federal, and private land, like federal or state. So private companies extract timber from public land all the time. And the Forest Service plans and they manage these timber sales, they build the roads, they do everything, and then they're like, okay, so you private logging company can come in and log this now, and we're going to subsidize your costs, and we've already done all the legwork for you, we've built your roads, and we've managed this forest, so now it's ready to go. Here it is on a silver platter. All right, and when you have a private area of land, it's not as profitable because that private company is doing all of this stuff. Okay, so then companies go in, they log that area, and they sell the timber for a profit, subsidized by taxpayers, which I don't necessarily agree with. National parks the first national park was in the US. It was Yellowstone National Park. It was established in 1872, and these are places not for logging, not for mining, not for anything. This is you go in, and you're like, ooh, I'm gonna hike, I'm gonna do approved recreational activities in this area. A lot of time that's, no boating, no ATVs and stuff like that. All right. And then we have habitat fragmentation is happening everywhere. So we need to have these preserves or in these reserved areas, and those are vital, and they're vital for preserving biodiversity and ecosystems and everything. So as you guys know from what David Attenborough had said, in Costa Rica, they had lost a lot of their forests, and they paid people and organizations and everything to come in and reforest this area. And they have reforested so much of their country. And what they focus on and what we need to focus on when it comes to reserves and preserves is making them as continuous as possible and connecting as many as we can together. So you have 75 possible acres you can preserve. Rather than doing 1 acre here, 1 acre here, 1 acre here, 1 acre here, you have 75 plots of 1 acre. What you want to do is you want to have a 75 plot acre, because as you guys know from the theory of island biogeography, that bigger area is going to be able to have more biodiversity. You're going to have more ecosystems. You're going to have the outer layer, but you're also going to have that core inner layer. Okay, so you can see here it's nice, the core area, the buffer zone, and that transitional area, it says over there. All right, we're done.